we praise scientists. We hear these stories about these mad scientists, in the lab with their wild hair and the white coat, and they're mixing up, potions and formulas, and they're experimenting. They're experimenting. They have an idea of what they're trying to create, but only experience will show them, you know, how much value is there. And so for us, that looks like going out getting real life market feedback. If you have an idea, let's just say, for an example, you feel like you make the world's best coffee. Well, it might be a good idea to go to a couple coffee shops and allow the owners and let the customers taste your coffee, and they're going to let you know if it's worth paying for or if it's not.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to a brand new episode of the None of Your Business podcast. And if you're watching us on video, you're like, wait a minute, where's Lacey? Lacey's feeling a little bit under the weather today, but here's one of the things that is super important. No matter what, you have to be resourceful and figure out ways that you can continue the show. And today's guest is super important. We want to make sure that we have this dialogue. And so even though Lacey's under the weather, I'm not. So I'm here with you today, and we're going to be talking to Kamar Zachery. We're going to be talking about the importance of having a niche, the importance of not trying to do all things, not trying to do everything. And we're also going to learn a little bit about his story. He has a super compelling story that I know is going to motivate and inspire so many of you that have a dream, that are like, yeah, I have this great idea. Well, how are we going to go from where you are now to the execution of that? All of that and more. Kamar Zachery here on the None of Your Business podcast. Kamar, thank you so much for being with us.
Pleasure's all mine, brother. I appreciate you having me.
Every single guest, I start with this question, but in your case, this is a very important question. It doesn't matter who it is that we're talking to. Everybody has a creation story, a journey from where you once were. I mean, unless you were just born wearing a niche or die hat, you have a creation story of how we get here. How do we end up talking to each other? Fill us and our listeners in on your journey to get you to this point.
Absolutely. Well, like most people, I had dreams and goals. It initially started off with wanting to be a professional basketball player. And in a sense, I chose a niche in terms of sports. Choosing a niche means saying no to everything else. And so I said, no to football. I said no to soccer. I said no to baseball. And I said yes to basketball. And so roughly around the age of 19, that's kind of when I got a wake-up call, and I realized that my basketball career was coming to an end. And it wasn't because I wanted it to. It's just because, the NBA was not looking for my lack of talent. And so I found entrepreneurship naturally because, like a lot of people, we don't really think about what's next after college. And you've done something for so long, it becomes your identity. I identified with basketball, with sports, and there was no backup plan because, I had a little bit of an ego. And so when people would ask me if I had a backup plan, I automatically took it as them telling me that I wasn't good enough for my plan A. And, in some instances, yeah, you're going to have people that's going to ask for your plan B because they can't see the plan A becoming a reality. And sometimes that advice is accurate, and sometimes it's not. And so life will tell you if they're right or you're wrong. And for me, everyone was right. Basketball was definitely over. And because I hadn't thought about anything after college, I didn't really take classes serious. Just to be honest with you, I didn't respect, the professors. I was a marketing major, and I didn't respect the professors. Not that they weren't great people, but none of them owned the business. None of them were business owners. And that's very naive of me to judge someone like that, but that's just where I was at that time. And so I didn't really take my classes serious. Fast forward, started a lot of different businesses in industries that had nothing to do with each other. I had an apparel business, had a daycare center, I had a real estate company. I even had a small time copywriting company that didn't last too long. I was in the mortgage industry at one point in time. I was in network marketing industry. And so, how did I come up with this concept of niche or die, or some would say niche or die? I realized that my lack of focus was my biggest hurdle. It wasn't the lack of experience. It wasn't the lack of expertise. It wasn't the lack of skill set. It was the lack of focus. Many of us, including you too, you possess certain talents and abilities that there's a good chance that you're probably not utilizing them. And the best way to start figuring out, how to actually apply those talents and abilities is to figure out who it is that you want to serve. And so that's a roundabout way of me coming up with this concept of niche or die. I see a lot of people searching, and every week there's a new business opportunity that they want to explore, and it's virtually impossible. We're limited with our time. We may have an abundance of ability, but time is one of those things that we don't really have a say so. There's 24 hours for each of us per day. And in order to be great, to be exceptional, to be a Dr. Sean Deal, in order to reach that level, you have to niche. You have to make a decision at who you're going to serve, who you're going to become, and where you're going to plant your flag.
So much to unpack there. I want to go back to this idea of the plan A and the plan B. So would you tell someone, like, you hear that, I don't know exactly what they say. There's a saying like, we know plan B. Would you tell somebody it's important to have a plan B, or what advice would you give for someone that has, even in the business world, I am going to help Masons to create online courses on how to build sidewalks and brick walls or do masonry. And you look at it and you're like, okay, well, I don't know, like if there's much of a market for that, you should maybe have a plan B. What do you think about that? Plan B or no plan B?
I agree with what you just said. If there's a market for it. So no matter how passionate I am about, someone's plan A or plan B, the real question is, what does the market think? So my advice would be test. We praise scientists. We hear these stories about these mad scientists, in the lab with their wild hair and the white coat, and they're mixing up, potions and formulas, and they're experimenting. They're experimenting. They have an idea of what they're trying to create, but only experience will show them, how much value is there. And so for us, that looks like going out getting real life market feedback. If you have an idea, let's just say, for an example, you feel like you make the world's best coffee. Well, it might be a good idea to go to a couple coffee shops and allow the owners and let the customers taste your coffee, and they're going to let you know if it's worth paying for or if it's not. Or maybe you are good at creating a lifestyle around that coffee. Maybe it's not that the coffee just tastes so good. Maybe it's because you have a way of creating an atmosphere that allows people to want to spend $5, $6, $10 for coffee. And so going back, no, I don't believe you should have a plan B. I think you should just have a plan A, but be flexible enough. Don't marry your initial idea of that plan A, because again, our ideas are like babies. And although I don't have kids of my own, I have a 2-year-old niece, and I love her to pieces. But that's how we look at our ideas sometimes. We're very emotional and we're attached to them, and we feel like it's already the finished product when we give birth to that idea. But the honest truth is that's really just the beginning. We have to allow the market to give us feedback to where we can mold that baby into being something great, something better, and something that obviously, the market is willing to stand behind and support.
I'm going to come up to Niche or Die. Right on his ball cap there, if you're watching on video, nicheordie.com. That's where you can find out more about Kamar. I want to give that early on in the show so that you guys can start jumping on that website. Tons of cool information there. I still got to go back. So I still got a couple things to unpack. You had success. You found some success in the network marketing realm. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And what did you learn from that? Because that's something that, when you say that, it's like 50-50. Some people are like, ooh, tell me more. And other people are like, oh, I don't know about that. What were some of the biggest lessons you learned working in that space?
People skills. That is the hands down the best lesson I got from network marketing, is because, you're met, in most cases, you're met with opposition from the very beginning. No one's excited. No one's excited to hear a network marketing opportunity. No one is waking up tomorrow morning, jumping out of bed, looking for a network marketing opportunity. A lot of times we call them wounded warriors. A lot of times, some of the greatest successes that I've met personally in network marketing were people who had some level of success in their life. They got a bit of a taste of it. Maybe it was in corporate, or maybe they had their own business. And network marketing was the perfect fit that allowed for them to win again. But because it's met with so much opposition, people don't want to risk their reputation because it's frowned upon in most times. And, in this generation, it's a little bit different, but it still has that. It still has that sting. No one looks for. Back in my day, now everything is online, but back in my day, you didn't look at a presentation online. You had to. What I would do is I would go out to the mall because I didn't know anyone. We call it network marketing. Well, I love my friends, but no one in my inner circle were the type of people that I would recruit for a business. And I'm not saying this because I'm judging them. I'm saying this because I tried. So I tried to recruit them into my business, and I learned real quick about people. And so it forced me, Sean, to go out to malls, to grocery stores. I was the guy walking around. I didn't have a shopping cart, so I just looked weird. This guy is walking around the grocery store for 45 minutes and he doesn't even have a shopping cart. And I would introduce myself to people, and I just had this elevator pitch that I would just walk up to total strangers. And it was very hard. It was very hard. And sometimes I ask myself, why did I even do it? Well, it was because the goal was worth more than the short-term humiliation that I dealt with. It gave me thick skin. And I'll be honest, probably 95% of the time, it did not lead to them joining my business. But each and every time I got more and more comfortable communicating with total strangers. And then one of my friends, he told me, he said, why don't you, I think he heard a quote from Aristotle Onassis. He said, find the most luxurious hotel in any city and you go sit at the bar. because they asked him what would he do if he lost all of his wealth and he only had just a few dollars left. They asked him, what would he do? And he said, well, I wouldn't go to a cheap cafe and spend the rest of my money on a sandwich and a coffee. He said, I would find the most luxurious hotel and I would go sit at the bar and buy a cup of coffee. And he said, because of the type of people, the caliber of people that congregated at those type of venues, he said he knew it was only a matter of time where he would make the right connections. And then he would, within a short period of time, be able to accumulate all of his wealth again. And that's sort of what happened for me in network marketing. My biggest success came from me connecting with people that I did not have a relationship with prior to me joining that profession. It did not come from, an ambitious family member who I was able to recruit or an ambitious friend. I played sports for many years. It was never someone that I knew from the past. And, even, how you and I got introduced to each other, Sean, the biggest victories in my life came from me connecting with other people. And it had nothing to do with, honestly, a lot of people say, well, you shouldn't sell yourself short, but I'll sell myself short and say that I can't think of any skill set that I've brought to the table other than my ability of making connections with other people. I was never the guy that had the best and brightest idea. I was never the sharpest kid in class. I sure wasn't the dullest, but I was never the sharpest kid in class. And so network marketing provided that training ground for me. I guess you could call it character development.
Chet Holmes, the great Chet Holmes, talks about your rejection armor, and being involved in that industry helped you to build a strong rejection armor. You come to the conclusion at some point that 95% of the people are saying no. They're saying no to the opportunity. They're not saying no to Kamar. It's not like they didn't even know you. So they're just not interested at that time in the opportunity that you had presented. And what that does, it starts to build your rejection armor. It starts to get you comfortable with making incrementally more and more or bigger and bigger asks when in situations where you have the opportunity to do so. The other thing that I love is this idea of relational capital. This is something that we talk about a lot. I guess if I had a hat with a saying on it, mine would say relational capitalist. One of the things I think that COVID did is, we have this situation in our economy with inflation, and you also have the devaluation of our currency, right? And so you have less buying power with your dollars. But one of the things that's interesting is relational capital tends to increase in value over time as long as you nurture it, right? And so you have done a fantastic job of, one, creating phenomenal rejection armor, but also learning the skills to amass tremendous relational capital. And yes, that is how you and I end up in this conversation. So let's transfer it to niche or die. You tell us about the birth of that as a business for you. Why? Because this is actually the thing that you teach. How did that become your niche?
Well, first of all, I'm a movie buff, right? I grew up watching Die Hard and watching James Bond movies and it was always the titles, especially with the James Bond movies. You hear that they're going to release a new movie in the next 2 to 3 years, and and then they tease you, and they first you see the title of the movie before you see anything else, and then months later, sometimes years later, they'll show a trailer. Well, Niche or Die sounded like a movie, a James Bond movie mixed with Bruce Willis' Die Hard, honestly. And I just thought it was a cool concept. I thought about it about a year ago. I didn't do anything with it up until maybe about 6 or 7 months ago, where I was starting to focus on a particular niche. I wasn't calling it niche or die, but I was just basically, consulting other entrepreneurs, helping them discover and dominate their niche. And the conversation, just kept coming up, like, man, I gotta come up with a cool name for this. Just be, for no other reason than, honestly, for no other reason than I just wanted a cool name. I had this amazing product that I could offer people, but I needed a cool name. I needed something cool to hook them with. And so, yeah, niche or die. I made the connection, and we went full throttle. And the purpose of it is to help entrepreneurs, with clarity, understanding that, for many years, I thought that when you choose a small segment of people to target your message to market to, it means that you automatically say no to everyone else. And I thought that meant leaving opportunity on the table. And I didn't like that feeling. I grew up in a single parent home, and we didn't leave, when it was dinner time, you ate all of your food. There was no such thing as, I'm gonna put this part away and come back to it later. And honestly, that transpired into every other aspect of my life. I didn't like the idea of turning opportunities down. And I'll be honest, it probably came from a scarcity, having a scarcity mentality. Because again, just growing up, resources were limited, and the mindset was, you get all you can, get as much as you can now, because there may not be another opportunity. And I realized that hurt me in my career. And so as I gained more clarity, my business started picking up. When I started specifically helping entrepreneurs discover their niche and helping them go out into the market and test their theory, and coming back and analyzing the feedback. Because ultimately, again, we all sit in a room and we think about great ideas and things that we want to change the world with. But what only matters is if the market thinks that it's necessary, if the market has that need or that desire, if the market doesn't have that pain point, then we don't really have a business if we can't help anyone, if no one else agrees with us that that's a problem. And then the second thing is, the market has to agree on what we're charging. And so because a lot of entrepreneurs have a hard time choosing a segment, a niche, their marketing is all over the place. This week their marketing method is, hey, we're gonna reach out and we're gonna help realtors, get more listings. And then next week they're, hey, we're gonna help, entrepreneurs start a trucking business. And then the week after that, it's something else. And so it confuses the audience. And then what happens is you don't build a deep understanding of a particular segment. But once you actually say, you know what, I am going to work specifically with realtors who live in Atlanta, Georgia, who are under the age of 40. And a matter of fact, all of them are females. Well, that's a very specific niche. That's very specific. Now you're able to communicate with that particular audience on an intimate level. You should be able to write a day in their diary, because the challenges that they have, the struggles, what they're coming up against, most of their desires. You'll find commonalities across that pool of candidates or prospects. And so when you create your marketing pitch or your message, you're able to speak directly to them. They hear you, and then they respond. But when you create a message that's intended for everyone, it reaches no one, and it will lead you to believe that what you're providing, there's something wrong with it. Where the truth is, it's nothing wrong with what you're providing. It's just that you're a generalist, And you and I spoke about that, when we first talked. You're far from a generalist. You went into the medical field, but you specialize. And to be honest with you, when you specialize, people who specialize, they make the most money, they have the most fun, and they have a little bit of extra time to golf uh, when the opportunity provides themselves. Whereas people who are generalists, they work hard most of the times. They work 4 or 5 times harder. They make a fraction of the money, and many times they don't have fun. They actually hate what it is that they do. And so I just thought it was a way to win on all levels by narrowing down that target audience. And when I did that for myself, my business exploded. And so now I wanted to be able to help other entrepreneurs do the same.
Yeah. And so if somebody goes to nicheordie.com, www.nicheordie.com, what you've done is, as a service to people who might hear what you're saying, actually intellectually understand it. So, how can you argue with that? But then also maybe emotionally are like, yeah, but we fall back into our old ways. You have put together a tremendous resource. You have begun this process of interviewing people to help anybody who wants to understand this concept and apply it in their business. They can go to www.nicheordie.com. And what will they find there? You have access to this interview series. What are they going to find inside when they join?
Absolutely. So once they go to the website and they get access to the interviews, what they're going to find is I've interviewed some of the world's best and brightest business minds, people featured in Forbes, Bloomberg, Inc. magazine, and I went out and I recruited them all. I recruited them to come together to do video interviews to show up and coming entrepreneurs, existing entrepreneurs, or people who haven't even thought about becoming an entrepreneur yet, and showing them the power of what's possible when you choose a niche. Everyone that's a part of this interview series, they chose a niche, whether it was intentional or unintentional, but they're at the top of their class in their space. And so the series is designed, again, to show people examples, real life examples of people who actually was able to accomplish more by doing less. And when I say less, I don't mean taking a shortcut or not doing a good job. What I'm saying is
Focus.
Focus. Absolutely. There's a level of focus. Michael Phelps, I heard a guy say this, I can't take credit for it, but he said Michael Phelps' #1 job was to wake up and get in the pool. That's it. It makes life easier when you know exactly what it is that you're going to do, and you're able to create great results. Maybe we might not be Olympic gold medalists, but we can arrive at that at our own version of what that looks like in our lives.
So amongst the people that you've interviewed, what was the most compelling piece of advice that you heard someone give?
Whew, man, that's a good one. I would say there's 2 that come to mind, but I will say it really comes down to, and it sounds so cliche-ish, and what I'm about to say, I probably wouldn't have wanted to hear it if I was a viewer, but it's the truth, is you really have to be passionate about what it is that you're doing. And the reason I say passionate is because it is hard. It's very hard. But because you're passionate about it, you're more committed to the result that can come out of that situation, or it's changing someone's life, or it's changing the world, or maybe just your community. Whatever it is that you desire, being passionate about it will allow you to survive those tough times. And it's not a matter of if you're going to have tough times, it's when you're going to have tough times. It's inevitable. So that was the #1 piece of advice, again, I feel crazy saying that, because that is not the advice, because that's not a strategy. A lot of times we look for, what's the strategy? What's the secret to achieving, dramatic success? And it's passion. It's literally being passionate. Now, the other part, and I said there were two, that was the most profound thing that I heard. No, it was not the first time I'd ever heard someone say that, but for some reason it clicked. It clicked with me this time. Like literally, think about being a kid. Imagine being a child and you're hanging out on the playground and you're playing all day, and your parents are having to call you to come inside multiple times. Come on in. It's getting dark. Imagine being compensated for just having fun on the playground. And that's the example that I was given, because other opportunities will come that will allow you to expand. And one of the gentlemen that I was talking to, that's exactly what he said. He said he started with just passion. Of course, he had some raw talents and abilities, but wherever you lack in talent and ability, you can recruit for it. And that was the second piece of advice that I got, is whatever you lack in skill, talent, or ability, you can recruit for it. And so that's why it goes back to the number one lesson that I got from my experience in network marketing, was my ability to recruit. Because I was limited in my abilities and my talents and resources in so many ways, it forced me, because we all, especially us guys, we have an ego. I'll raise my hand. There's a little bit that exists, and we want to do it. We want to do everything on our own. And, the reality is we're stronger when we're able to lock arms with other people. And again, whatever you lack in skills, experience, resources, if you're passionate about your mission and you can convey it in a way to where it invites other people and it inspires them to get involved in that mission, man, there's nothing that you can't accomplish.
What is I don't know how to frame this properly, but I'm going to use the word craziest. Obviously, it's not the craziest, but I mean, I guess unique. What is the most unique niche that you have come across, that somebody had they had niched down so far down that maybe even you thought like, oh my gosh, I don't even know how many people exist in the world that you could possibly help?
So what's funny is I actually had a client that sold. This is crazy. All right, I had a client that sold Chow and German Shepherd mixed puppies. Crazy, right?
Yes.
I mean, who goes online and search for, a Chow and German Shepherd mixed puppy, right? But that wasn't, I can't take credit for that, because I didn't come up with that idea. That's just something, that's just something he was already doing. But what he was ashamed of that. And so I showed him the opportunity that lies in that. And we went to market, and guess what? He got some feedback. People, the dog, I would have to show you a picture, but the dog has a certain look. They're not as big as a German Shepherd, and they're not as furry as a Chow. It's literally in between, right?
Mm-hmm.
The best of both worlds, and they make some pretty mean dogs. But that's the wildest thing, that's the craziest thing I ever seen. And so I laugh about it because, I probably laughed when he initially said that that's what he was doing. So.
Well, I have two that I've seen, not firsthand. These are told to me by others, but they were coming to me and saying, Sean, have you ever heard of this? Well, the first one was, have you ever heard of this? There was a person that was growing rats. So they were in real estate and they were renting these homes, but one of the conditions is they had these like cages. They were like wooden cages up. They weren't like on the ground, and they were growing rats in these cages because they would sell them to people that owned snakes. And that apparently this is a big business. And you'd have to have a tenant that would be agreeable to you having this in your yard. The other, though, was I had a friend that was in the financial industry, and he told me that someone that he had graduated school with or that he heard about, recent grads. So they just graduated and they had said, and I think this frequently happens, where they had, announced to their friends like, hey, I'm going to go out and I'm only going to service people that have a net worth of $1 billion or more. And his classmates were like, well, that's ridiculous. I mean, and this is the classic thing that you talk about. And over the course of a year, he had no clients. And in fact, his classmates came to learn that in that year, I think somebody had come along and they had like $200 million in net worth. And they wanted to actually have a discussion about working with him. And he had said, no, I only work with people that have $1 billion or more net worth. Well, at the end of the first full year after graduating, this individual had 0 clients. They had no clients. And his classmates, some of them had gone into certain firms and they were working and building their own business, their book of business. So they were making some money. And this guy made no money. He had no clients. He had been in business for a year. He had 0 clients. At the end of the second year, though, he had 1 client. He only had 1 client at the end of 2 years, but the 1 client did have a net worth of $1 billion or more. He then was making more money from his 1 client than most of his classmates were making with, hundreds of their other clients that they were working out their 401ks or whatever they were doing. And that is a great lesson. And you had mentioned that the people that are hyper niche down, they are able to command a higher fee because they service a very specific population in a very specific way. Now, of course, you can't service a billionaire with generalized knowledge, but that's a very specific niche that I have seen. And so, hopefully people will take this to heart. I want to encourage everybody to visit www.nicheordie.com. It's free to sign up for the interview series. You're going to see all these amazing people. I believe they drop into your inbox 1 a day. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Well, you get Kamar every single day until you tap out, and then you're not going to tap out. You're going to until you figure out what your niche is. Kamar is dedicated to providing you with massive value to help you to determine what that is, to get rid of that noise in your head telling you not to do it, and develop a business model that is very specific to the people that you want to serve. The last thing that I'll say too, it's very important that we work with people with whom we do our best work. Michael Port in Book Yourself Solid talks about this in Ideal Client. You want to be surrounded by people with whom you do your absolute best work. Well, that's niche. You need to determine who are the people that bring you joy. Those clients that you're working with them and time just flies by, just like it did today with Kamar. You're like, wow, I just lost myself in the conversation. I can't believe that I even get paid to do this. Why not just create an entire business around those people? Bring more of them into your life and into your business. I promise you that you will be well fulfilled in life. Kamar, thank you so much for joining us here on None of Your Business. You've been a fantastic guest.
Absolutely, man. It's been my pleasure. I appreciate you having me.
I look forward to continuing our relationship and finding points of intersection, ways that we can collaborate. This is a very special purpose and mission that you're on. We've got to help people to not just try and serve all people by being all things to all people. Your gifts are in a very specific area. nicheordie.com. Check him out. I'm sure you're going to love it. That's all we have for you today on this episode of None of Your Business. But as always, we'll be back again next week with a brand new episode. And I'm going to see if I can convince Lacey to join me then.